It's Dr. Rowe here with a really quick message. Look at this. Just sat outside a supermarket, doing a bit of shopping, and I thought I'd just leave a quick message for those of you that have said the weather's been getting you down just this last few days, this week, and COVID and everything else with the lockdown. Some people are getting a bit demotivated, I know. Others are getting highly motivated, and others are just kind of vegging out. So I'm just shouting over this torrential hail. I mean, this hail is serious. Look at this. Oh my God. Welcome to summer. If you're watching this from overseas, this is a typical UK summer day. Unbelievable. Yeah, I just really wanted to say, and hopefully you can hear me, that, you know, in these times when things are a little bit more challenging, it's so important to stay motivated. So one of the things that I've just done recently is I've pulled out some of my old books, audios that I used to have. Hi. Lydia, where are you? Oh yeah, okay, you're not here. You're overseas. You're Singapore, I think, aren't you? I can't remember now. Yeah, the biggest challenge, of course, is keeping yourself motivated for a lot of things. Now, I'm a big believer in going back and revisiting things. So I've just started reading some of my old personal development books. My 11-year-old daughter, Savannah, I just spent an evening with her reading a book called Who Moved My Cheese? Now, if you haven't heard of that book, yeah, my car is getting hammered there, that's true. If you haven't read that book, it's a fantastic book. It's a book that anyone can read, and you can read something into that book about you, who you are, how you show up in the world. 4 personalities, 4 little characters, 2 mice, 2 mini people, 2 little people. And it's interesting because I almost sent it to a couple of people just this last month, and I thought, no, I'm not going to do that, because I got 3 copies I found. I thought they might want to hear the message, but sometimes you don't want to do that. You just want people to have that discovery for themselves. But so that's one of the books I've dug up recently. Excuse me, I've got a dry throat. Another book that I just dug out recently was a book called The Magic of Thinking Big by Dr. David Schwartz. Now, the rain has stopped. Dr. David Schwartz, I read that book probably 25 years ago. Now, for some of you, you might have just been barely walking around, maybe 10, 11 years of age. But that was an amazing book. It really changed my thinking, and it got me to think in a different way in terms of how I see things and how I overcome challenges. That's another classic book that I read, and I dug that out recently. There's a great series of books by a gentleman called Og Mandino. Now, Og Mandino sadly has passed away, but he wrote all these mini books which are incredible. One of them being The Choice, another one being The Greatest Salesman. And I think if you take the time to read the books, they're quite detailed read. They're a storybook, but with quite a heavy message in some of them. And if you're into his style, you'll really like it. So he's classic, brilliant book. I also just found recently a book called The 10th Insight, which is also a book that was written after the Celestine Prophecy. So if you've never read the Celestine Prophecy, that was one of the first books that I read years ago that really talked about the law of attraction and how when 2 people meet, whether they meet for 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, but each person, when they meet in that moment, there is a reason they met. There's an exchange between them. It could only be a brief meeting, but they leave you with something, a message, an inspiration, or a learning lesson. It could be not necessarily a positive one. That was a classic book. Another book I found, because I'm just going through my old archives, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. You've probably heard of him. He's written some amazing books since then. Sorry, that was a call coming in. So Paulo Coelho has written some incredible books, of which that was one of the most famous ones that when he first launched, but since then there's been a series of other incredible books. And a lot of his style is storytelling. So he tells a story, but within the story, there is a really powerful personal development, inspirational message. Another great book you might want to look up is The Monk Who Lost His Ferrari. I've gone blank. Somebody might remember it if you're watching. See if you can pull it up. The monk who stole or lost his Ferrari. There you go. Anyway, the book's a very good book, and it's again, funnily enough, I can remember the story, but I just can't remember the title of the book. And this gentleman looks a bit like me, actually, the author. He's a baldy. I did find some old CDs and I did find some old tapes. Now, those of you that are too young, you won't remember tapes, but tapes are these old things. Now we're fortunate to have digital media to do this. Find something that inspires you. Find The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Thank you, Nish. That's brilliant. That's right. The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And it's a great story, a lesson of insight more than anything else, but also there's some deep meaning in there as well if you read into it. So thank you for that reminder. So I found up my old tapes, and of course nowadays everything's on digital, it's on YouTube, Facebook, etc. There's some incredible content out there. Find people that inspire you. A little lesson I learned is, that's right, Robin Sharma. He wrote the book. So a great lesson, Tuesdays with Maury and Freakonomics. There's a book that's come in by Lydia. Tuesdays with Maury and Freakonomics. Thank you for that. I haven't read that, Lydia. I will look that one up myself. I'll make a note of that. I'll go back and watch the live on this. So I've found myself in more recent years going and listening and watching people that I wouldn't normally necessarily immediately be drawn to, but someone's recommended them to me. So, in different subjects, different fields. I'm a massive follower of people like, if you've never heard of her, Lynn Twist. Lynn Twist wrote a book called The Soul of Money. Very spiritual lady, incredible inspirational story that she's come along and raised millions and millions of pounds for charities and worked with the Global Hunger Organization. Lovely, absolutely beautiful. And, the thing that I'm finding at the moment is that in this time, there's a lot of information out there. Take the time to filter their crap from the quality content. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to people, but there's a lot of people out there now. And some people are just pushing content out for the sake of pushing content out. And I don't think that's the way to do it. I think, when we have a message to share, it's not how long it is. It's more about, does it have value to you? Does it have meaning to you? Can you take something from it? It's your time. It's very precious. Try if you can. There's not a lot of driving going on at the moment, but try if you can, maybe at night or in the morning, listen to something that inspires you. It doesn't have to be long. A lot of people think they have to sit down for an hour or two. I think even if you do 10 to 15 to 20 minutes and get something that inspires you, take some messages to you. I'm actually reading a book at the moment, which is written for stock market traders, but it's a human psychology book. And I find it fascinating because it's really reminding me of some of the things inside myself that I carry into business and into my life, but also it reminds me of some of the tools that I've been using for a long time, but new tools that I can actually bring back in when I kick back off and start my live events again as well. So that's really important. And I'm going back over old books where I've highlighted them. How many of you have highlighted stuff in the past? So you've highlighted things, and I'm looking at what I used to highlight and I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's interesting. But now at 54 years of age, I'm seeing something else in the book and I'm thinking, actually, that is really meaningful for me. So, there's different books. One of the books is Welcome to My Trading Room. That's a great book. And so that's one I'd recommend you read. I'm trying to think of the author as well. What I'll do is I'll do another post and I'll pull a few books up. Sorry, I'm in the car at the moment and I've got a lot of stuff going on, so I'm just juggling. Thanks for that recommendation by Lydia. So that's for Soul and Freakonomics. Tuesdays is for you. Yeah, okay, so that's brilliant. Somebody's asked the question, do you think it's safe for kids to go back to school in June? Now, look, I can't give you advice. I'm cautious about it. We are actually discussing that at the moment, and I actually drew my children out of school early before even the UK schools did that. So we made a choice to do that because the reality is that children have died, as we know, and it's not even that. And if you watch the podcast that we did about a month ago, it's what people are carrying on them. So, I came out today with my mask, and some people laugh at the idea of the mask, but the mask has two purposes. One is mainly it's to stop it breathing out onto other people. But if everyone does that, it stops that potential transmission. Challenge with schools is even if you might be a parent and there's no one in your family that has COVID, but then the child goes in and one other parent or child has crossed paths with or touched or come across somebody else that's got COVID and it's now in their hands, for example, it can actually be passed on. And this was the conversation that took place in the interview on Growth Tribe's podcast about a month ago, where what was explained to us was this mechanism and how it gets into our body and the two different types of immune system that we have in our body. We have an intrinsic one, we have a defensive one, and we also have one that reacts, and each person's different. So, you know, I must admit, I'm inclined for not going back to school personally. But that's my own personal view on it. So, yeah, I mean, you have to make that call yourself, I guess. You have to decide, and it's a risk factor, isn't it? I mean, ultimately, if everybody's tested, then they may have to have kind of red, green, and amber system, and there's talk of lots of different things. But it's still in, you know, any virus goes in phases, and if it can rip through a village or rip through a small community, and that's what they've done historically, it will very quickly take those that are weak and the ones that survive develop the immunity, and that's historically how, you know, a virus has worked. And then you add that to a small town, and then you add that to a large country, and now you add it to a globe. It has to go in phases, because when you lock down, you stop some people or many people getting the virus, which is what's been happening. And that can affect the R numbers, the R0, R1 number, which is I think it's the number they use in the medical world to say how many people it passes on to. So of course the challenge there is, you know, the upside is you minimize the contact with other people, so you reduce the death toll, which is helping, and it helps relieve the pressure on, say, the NHS. But of course, when you open the doors again, if it spreads through even one or two people, it will start to create that viral effect, and you'll get the second wave they've been talking about. So that's typically how it happens. I've been asked the question, am I reading a lot of content about coronavirus online? Am I spending a lot of time looking and reading all the statistics? If I'm absolutely honest, I'm actually not. I started off, my other half does. She keeps a quick update on it, and then she kind of gives me a feedback on it. But the truth is that for me, I'm mindful of who I can help and how we can. It's a challenge for all of us. You know, first of all, you look after yourself and your family. Then outside of that circle, who, in a motivated way, who else can you look after in a safe way? And then outside of that, how can you impact the world? And I'm seeing two types of people, oddly enough. Those that seem to be absolutely absorbed with what social media and the news is saying, and they're really being drawn into some of the terrible stories, and it is sad, and it's important to be aware of them, but it's how we can be inspirational in that as well. So as long as you can manage that, otherwise what I'm finding is some people's emotional state gets really drawn down, getting into a really heavy place, and it's affecting their energy and mood in their home. And it's having a spill-on effect with their family. So it is a level of filtering, and I think it's filtering good quality information and some inspirational stories, like the 98-year-old gentleman that's raised, I think it's 14 million now, is it? It's incredible. And these are the things I love to see, and we talk to our kids about as well. So, you know, we can't shy away from it, but it's equally, if we allow it to absorb us, sometimes we can become a victim of that information as well. I don't know if this makes any sense. Lydia's saying Texas doesn't have any tests yet. In the UK, there is talk of a test now that is coming out, and I don't know when they're looking to release it, but apparently it's very, very accurate, whereas before they were unsure if they were going to get the accuracy. So I guess we're going to see over the next month or so how that's going to filter out. And then maybe, I don't know, if they're going to give people a card to carry. I'm not exactly sure how that's working. So look, one of the best ways to stay motivated is to do something inspirational for another human being. And Tony Robbins has said for many years, people will do more for other people than they will do for themselves. And it's something I've taught people over the years, even myself, when I've been at events. If you came to my last CWI event about 4 months ago, I was there till 11 o'clock at night. We were serving people and helping them, and they were queuing up. And then finally my team dragged me away, and they said, look, you've got to look after yourself. And I think that's the message I want to share with everybody. Look after yourself, and then not just to look after yourself physically, but spiritually, emotionally, and motivationally as well. So don't be too drawn into the whole watching and being consumed by just movies and Netflix, which I know a lot of people are doing. I think Netflix and Prime are doing very well at the moment. But can you find the time to maybe, instead of doing a movie night, doing an inspirational night, a motivational night? Maybe sit round the table and talk to your family about what inspires them and what motivates them. I can see Rob Tucker, he's online. Hi Rob, if you're there and you're listening, amazing. Rob's done some great work in Africa with young children over there in schools, and hopefully he's still managing to do that somehow remotely. So that's the thing, is finding people that are inspirational and then seeing what they're doing and duplicating that, and find some great books to read as well. The hail has stopped. I've got to get back to the family with some food. You can see in the back of the car there, and Have an amazing evening, everybody. Some of you have asked me if I would read a bit more from my Turning Point book. I have brought it back home with me, so I will see if I can do that over the weekend as well. All right, stay well.